A transit instrument case sits open on a granite ledge above a narrow alpine valley in the Wind River Range. The instrument inside is still aligned to the last angle recorded. The entry appears in a bound field book dated July 1911. 3 stations established, a 4th planned along the western outcrop. The measurements end mid-column. Below the final line of instrument readings, a single sentence appears in a different hand rhythm than the rest of the record. Departure scheduled for first light. The party left the valley 6 days early. The equipment returned to lander intact, except for one damaged plane table. One register listed in the outfitting manifest was never returned. The valley survey was never extended, and the 4th station was never built. The Wind River Range occupies the western interior of Wyoming, running roughly northwest to southeast for approximately 100 miles. The range forms the eastern boundary of the Green River Basin and the western edge of the drainage systems feeding the upper Wind River. Elevations across the central peaks exceed 13,000 feet, with glacial remnants still present on northern exposures as late as the mid-20th century. The valley in question sits at roughly 9,000 feet, flanked on 3 sides by talus fields and granite walls that rise steeply to ridgelines with little transitional slope. Access from the east requires crossing 2 high passes. From the west, a single drainage corridor exists, but it floods seasonally and becomes impassable without specialized equipment during snowmelt. Summer conditions in this part of Wyoming are compressed and unpredictable. The growing season at elevation is measured in weeks. Afternoon convective storms develop rapidly over the central peaks, often producing lightning at frequencies that make open ridge travel dangerous between noon and early evening. Temperature swings of 40 degrees within a single day have been documented at comparable elevations throughout the range. In the valley itself, cold air drainage creates overnight low temperatures, well below freezing even in July. Morning frost on equipment was a routine observation in period field records from similar terrain across the region. The valley floor is crossed by a braided stream fed by 2 separate glacier-sourced tributaries. Wet meadow sections alternate with boulder fields deposited by historical glacial retreat. Timber coverage is sparse, confined primarily to the valley's northern margin, where a lodgepole stand follows the lower drainage. The southern exposure is largely open, with Krumholtz vegetation beginning at approximately 10,000 feet. For survey work requiring line of sight between stations, the terrain presented significant challenges. Establishing control points with clear triangulation angles required positioning instruments at exposed locations on the talus margins rather than on the valley floor itself. The surrounding peaks had been partially mapped by earlier territorial surveys conducted in the 1870s and 1880s. Horizontal positions for several summits had been calculated, but interior valleys at this depth within the range had not received systematic ground-level measurement. By the opening decades of the 20th century, federal land administration agencies were expanding their interior survey coverage as part of broader resource assessment programs. The Wind River Valley Campaign was one of several contracted operations assigned to fill gaps in the existing geodetic record. The field party assigned to the valley in the summer of 1911 consisted of 4 men. The party chief was a contracted surveyor named Aldous Fenwick, whose prior work had included stations in the Absaroka Range and portions of the Bridger Basin. He was accompanied by 2 rodmen listed in agency correspondence as H. Carlisle and W. Duvain, and a camp hand identified only by the surname Pratt. The party departed the railhead at Lander in early July, traveling by pack string through the foothills before establishing a base camp at the lower mouth of the valley drainage. Equipment included a transit instrument, leveling rod sets, a plane table, and provisions sufficient for approximately 6 weeks of field operations. The first entry from Fenwick's field book, dated July 9th, describes the approach to the upper valley and the selection of an initial instrument station on a rock outcrop along the eastern talus margin. The handwriting is consistent with routine note-taking and the content is technical throughout. Station A established. Backsite to Lander. Benchmark confirmed within acceptable closure. Forward angle to northeast ridge, crest measured. Repeat observations taken at morning and afternoon intervals for atmospheric correction. Camp positioned on dry ground near timber margin. Weather clear. no difficulties. The second entry, dated July 12th, records the establishment of a second control point approximately 1.5 miles northwest of Station A, near the base of a prominent rock formation Fenwick refers to as the Upper Shoulder. Station B established after half-day delay due to instrument transport across Wet Meadow section. Pack animal required for transit case. Angles to Station A confirmed on 3 separate observations. Closing error within tolerance. Carlisle reported possible rock instability on approach route above the dry stream bed. Alternate descent identified. Weather changing in afternoon. Return to main camp before dark. The July 15th entry shifts in character slightly, though the technical content remains primary. Attempted traverse to Station C location, scouted on July 13th. Route along southern talus blocked by overnight rock movement. A section of slope approximately 30 feet wide had shifted at some point during the previous night. No sound was noted during the night watch, which Pratt maintained until approximately 2 in the morning. The displacement was substantial enough to bury the flagged route markers placed during reconnaissance. Alternate approach identified along lower elevation. Progress delayed by approximately 4 hours. Pratt and Duvain returned to camp early. Fenwick and Carlisle completed preliminary angle set before storm-forced withdrawal. The entry for July 17th is the last to describe forward progress on the survey. Station C established on secondary approach. Full angle set completed to both A and B. Closure calculation satisfactory. Fenwick believes the western extension of the network can be completed within the remaining schedule if weather holds. Pratt reported that the pack animals had broken their picket line during the previous night and were found at the lower timber margin, approximately 1/4 mile from camp. No predator sign observed. Animals appeared uninjured. Pratt noted the animals were standing together and had not grazed, which he considered unusual given the available forage. The July 19th entry records measurements for a partial 4th station, but does not include a final closure calculation. The technical notes end mid-column. Below the last instrument reading, a single line appears in handwriting that field document analysts later described as noticeably less regular than the preceding entries. Departure from Valley scheduled for first light. Equipment secured. Notes complete to this point. Fenwick. The party returned to Lander 6 days ahead of the contracted schedule. Agency correspondence dated late July 1911 confirms receipt of the completed field notes and payment of the contract balance. A brief cover letter from Fenwick references the survey as completed, but notes that certain planned extension stations in the Upper Valley were not established. No formal explanation for the abbreviated scope appears in the administrative record. The completed control points were accepted without apparent objection, and the contract was closed. The agency's internal ledger for the following field season lists the Wind River Valley network among locations recommended for extension. That extension was not carried out in 1912, nor in the seasons immediately following. Subsequent survey campaigns in the Wind River Range during the 1910s and 1920s addressed peaks and ridgelines to the north and south of the valley. The valley network established by Fenwick's party remained unextended. Fenwick's cover letter to the agency, preserved in a federal records collection in Cheyenne, runs to less than a full page. The handwriting is composed, the sentence is brief. He confirms the 3 established stations, cites the closure calculations as within acceptable tolerances, and notes that the planned western extension was not completed due to what he describes only as conditions in the upper valley not conducive to continued operations. He does not elaborate. The letter was acknowledged by the contracting office with a standard receipt notation. No follow-up correspondence was initiated, and no field inspector was dispatched to review the scope reduction. What the letter does not address is the condition of the equipment returned with the party. An inventory notation attached to the contract closure, a single handwritten column, likely prepared by an agency clerk at the time of equipment return, lists the transit instrument as present but records the plane table as damaged, cause unstated. The leveling rods are listed without comment. One item, described in the original outfitting manifest as a bound field sketch register, does not appear in the return inventory at all. Whether it was lost in the field, retained by Fenwick personally, or simply omitted from the clerk's column is not established by any document in the collection. Fenwick submitted one additional survey contract application to the same agency the following spring for work in the Absaroka drainage well to the north. That application was approved. He completed the Absaroka work without reported incident. His name does not appear in agency contracting records after 1914. Whether he continued survey work under different contracts, changed occupations, or simply aged out of field operations is not known. No obituary has been located in Wyoming newspaper archives for the relevant decades. H. Carlisle and W. Duvain are not traceable beyond the single reference in the 1911 correspondence. The surname Pratt appears in a Fremont County census entry from 1920, listing a man of plausible age employed as a ranch hand near Dubois, but the connection to the survey party's camp hand cannot be confirmed. The geological character of the valley itself offers some framework for understanding what the party may have encountered during the final operational days. The talus fields flanking the southern exposure are composed primarily of granite and metamorphic debris from ongoing freeze-thaw fracturing of the upper cliffs. Rockfall in this zone is not exceptional. Periods of sustained overnight cold followed by rapid morning warming accelerate fracture propagation, and displacement events involving sections of slope 30 feet wide or larger have been documented in comparable Wyoming terrain. The July 15th entry's description of the blocked route is consistent with this mechanism. What is less easily accounted for by rockfall alone is the behavior of the pack. Animals noted on July 17th. Horses and mules in alpine environments will occasionally break picket in response to predator proximity, typically bear or mountain lion. But Pratt's observation that no predator sign was present and that the animals had not grazed despite available forage does not fit cleanly with that explanation. Prolonged standing without grazing in otherwise healthy animals can result from acute stress responses, though identifying the source of that stress from the record alone is not possible. A wildlife biologist reviewing the Fenwick notes in the 1970s, as part of a broader historical ecology study of the Wind River Range, noted the animal behavior observation in a footnote. She characterized it as consistent with acoustic or olfactory stimulus of undetermined origin, and left the matter there. Her study did not return to the valley for field work. The question of what specifically prompted the July 19th decision to depart has no direct documentary answer. The partial fourth station entry suggests Fenwick was still conducting measurements that morning, or had been as recently as the day prior. The instruments were functional. The transit is listed in the return inventory, damaged or not. The plane table records no instrument malfunction. And the weather on July 19th, based on regional station data from that period archived at the Wyoming State Climatological Office, was clear. A high-pressure system had moved through the Central Range on July 18th, breaking a run of afternoon convective activity. Conditions for survey work on July 19th would have been favorable. The departure note itself is the only record of Fenwick's reasoning, and it provides none. One additional piece of documentation entered the record decades later. In 1958, a separate survey party operating in the Wind River Range under a Bureau of Land Management contract established a new benchmark on the ridgeline above the valley's western margin. Their field notes, routine throughout, include a single observational remark entered by the party chief, a surveyor named Gerald Oakes, descended briefly into Upper Valley to assess possible station location on Central Outcrop. Found what appears to be a cairn of deliberate construction near the outcrop base, stones stacked to approximately knee height, not consistent with natural deposition. No survey marker pin or cap present. No inscription. Cairn not marked on any existing map. Returned to ridge. Station located on ridgeline as originally planned. Oakes does not identify the cairn as connected to any prior survey activity. He may not have known of Fenwick's 1911 work. The cairn's location, as best can be estimated from Oakes' station coordinates, falls within the general area of what Fenwick's notes describe as the intended location for the unfinished fourth station. Whether the cairn was constructed by Fenwick's party as a hasty marker, a reference point, or for some other field, purpose, or by an entirely unrelated party at an unknown date is not determinable. Cairns in high alpine terrain are built for navigation, for survey reference, for memorial purposes, and occasionally without recorded intent. The absence of a survey cap rules out official geodetic use. Nothing else rules anything in. The valley was not revisited by any documented survey operation between Oakes's 1958 observation and the close of the period covered by this reconstruction. The 3 control points established by Fenwick's party in July of 1911 appear in no subsequent geodetic adjustment. They were not incorporated into later networks. Whether this reflects the limited scope of the original work, the absence of extension data, or simple administrative discontinuity is a question the record does not answer. What the record does preserve is a sequence, a competent party, adequate equipment, favorable conditions on the final documented morning, and a departure that came 6 days early, and generated no explanation beyond 4 words: conditions not conducive. The equipment return log with its single damaged item and single missing register. The pack animals standing still in the dark at the timber margin. A cairn of unknown construction at the location of an unfinished station. Each of these details has a plausible account attached to it. Rockfall accounts for the blocked route. Acute animal stress has recognized physiological causes. Surveyors build cairns. Field registers are lost or retained. Contracts are closed short of scope for reasons that are practical and undramatic. The difficulty is not that any single element resists explanation. The difficulty is that the explanations do not quite overlap, that each detail sits in its own column, and the columns do not fully add up to a coherent withdrawal. Fenwick knew what they added up to. Whatever that was, he did not write it down. The valley has been mapped from the air since. Its contours appear on quadrangle sheets with the precision of photogrammetric survey. The ridgelines that Fenwick's party measured by transit angle are now rendered in 20-foot contour intervals, available in any map archive in the region. The 3 control points from 1911 are not labeled. The cairn Oakes observed in 1958 does not appear on any sheet. Some portions of the record close because the questions they contain were eventually answered. Others close simply because time moved on, and the people who might have clarified them did not speak or were not asked. This one closes without resolution, but the archive remains open. If you have encountered documentation connected to the 1911 Wind River survey, field correspondence, personal records, or any later reference to Aldous Fenwick or the members of his party, the reconstruction continues. If you have encountered documentation connected to the 1911 Wind River survey, field correspondence, personal records, or any later reference to Aldous Fenwick or the members of his party, the reconstruction continues.